Hello folks, I'm Bradley J. up in the White Mountains of New Hampshire, visiting my friend Doug Arion. Doug used to come into my radio show and talk about astronomy and cosmology and lots of science stuff. And since then, I've come up here to visit him once before, and I said, you know what, I got to bring the camera up here. We have to show everyone what you do. Doug has built an observatory himself. The roof slides back, which you'll see, and inside are a number of telescopes, which you'll also see, and he's going to choose one of those and break it down and explain how he constructed them, because he constructs them from scratch. He fabricates the parts, grinds the glass, and now as a camera capability, so he'll be able to project what he sees on a screen, and then you'll be able to see it without coming up to New Hampshire. So why don't we meet Doug and start the show here?
Absolutely. Bradley, it's great to have you here. Wonderful that you made the trip up. I've really enjoyed being on your shows before, so this is a great chance for you to see some of the toys that we have up here for looking at cool things up in the sky. This observatory, beautiful thing to have up here. It makes it very easy to be observing. Just push a button, open the roof, and we can run our telescopes. I've named it Damaqua, which is the Algonquin Abenaki word for beavers, because we have great beaver ponds here on our property. My brother, who's very artistic, created this sign for us and this emblem. It's really, really very cool. So shall we go in and get the roof open?
Absolutely.
What do you think?
Yeah, let's go check it out.
Okay.
All right, let's go in and see what this looks like from the inside. All right.
So there's a motor up here turning a gear, and that is what runs the roof, which rolls on wheels on rails on the walls. And this building was built by Paul Nielsen, one of the guys who helped build the house, and myself. Had a lot of fun doing it.
All right, Doug, why don't you give us a tour?
So these are a number of the telescopes that I have. This one here is a commercial telescope. This one's all commercial, but it's the one that I use primarily in our public science programs that I do at many locations throughout northern New Hampshire here, in schools, libraries, but mostly with the Appalachian Mountain Club. It's our program called Mountains of Stars, and you should check out mountainsofstars.org and learn more about what we're doing there. The other telescopes here are ones that I've actually built myself. The one here in the middle, the biggest one, this is a 10-inch telescope. So the thing that collects the light, the mirror in here, is 10 inches across, yay big. So just think about it. All the light that hits something this big gets squished down into a little tube that fits in your eye. That's why things look so bright and you can see so much detail with them. My telescopes, the sort of unique thing about the ones I built, they're based on bowling balls. This is an actual, honest-to-goodness bowling ball, one that's undrilled, hasn't been drilled before. And a bowling ball sitting on 3 little points, you can point in any direction you like. So it can point anywhere in the sky, and at the same time you can lower it if you want the eyepiece lower, raise it for the eyepiece higher for people of different heights. So it's a nice thing to be able to do. The other telescopes here that are also built around bowling balls, and Bradley will swing around and show you. This one here is the first one that I built. I made the mirror for this one back in the mid-'80s. And on a bowling ball. And this one here, another 6-inch telescope, also on a bowling ball. This has a mirror that is very, very sharp. This is one of the, all of them are great telescopes, but this one is really, really nice. Now, the cool thing about this is not only can you point these telescopes in any direction, but of course, things move in the sky. The Earth keeps turning. Remember, stop the world, I want to get off. Well, you can't stop the world, we can't get off. So you realize that anything that would start in the sky would start in the east over there, rise, and then set over here. And while you're looking through a telescope, which magnifies, things will just run right through the eyepiece because the telescope's connected to the Earth. So it would be nice if the telescope could follow things. Well, these telescopes actually follow. And there are 3 different versions of the equipment that do that. This is the first one I built. And this platform, these surfaces actually point right at the North Pole, which is right up there where Polaris is. And as I'll plug this one in, we'll run each of them so you can see them working. This little motor turns this belt, which turns a screw that slowly pulls the telescope over. So it actually takes an hour to go that short distance from one side to the other, but during that time, this telescope will move and follow the sky. So this turned out very well. I was very happy with this. And then when I went to build the very big telescope, I said, oh, okay, let's machine one out of aluminum and make a very precise version. So that's this tracking platform here. I can launch it. And the basic principle is the same. If you look carefully, you can see that this is slowly turning, and this will slowly swing its way over. And this takes about an hour and a half. So for an hour and a half, you can watch things, and then you just rewind it and continue. Now, these two mounts work very well, very happy with them, but I had an idea that I could make it even better. So each of these, the mount sits in the middle of this platform. So, well, why don't you just combine all of this so that you get all the forces straight down into the pier? And that's what this one is. So this one, we'll start this one. Instead of having an extended platform, this is a column. Same principle. This surface is pointing right north. This motor is slowly turning, and as it turns, it will slowly pull this across, and this tracks the sky. So this concept of tracking bowling balls has won a couple of awards. Those are some of the certificates up here. And the beauty of these telescopes is I can come out here any evening, push a button, the roof rolls off, telescopes are ready to go. To use your telescopes, you need some accessories, and so I've built a chest to hold them and a table so I can wheel this next to the telescope. But these are the eyepieces and filters and other accessories that can be used on all the telescopes. You have enough that you can run all of them all at the same time, and a place to keep charts so you can find things up in the sky. So a very convenient setup here that we can use to do observing.
I understand that you have capability now to electronically photograph and send these photographs digitally to a high definition screen.
Exactly. So this camera here, which I'll pull out of this telescope, this is a high-speed, high-sensitivity video camera made specifically for astronomy, and it cables into a computer to put it on a screen, and this will fit into any of the telescopes. I typically keep it here because we use this for public programs, but I've used it quite a bit on the big telescope, and you can see all sorts of great things on a screen. So right now, when we have COVID and we can't have people touching telescopes, we can still connect you with the universe and let you see things.
So you fabricate the barrel here, you make all the pieces?
We make basically all the pieces here. So the tubes on these telescopes are actually pieces of irrigation tubing made by Hastings in Nebraska. It's scraps from irrigation pipe. They're aluminum. We get them painted up. But then all the other parts that go on these I make. So, for example, here, all the parts that went into this drive system, these have all been machined. These were all just blocks of aluminum.
What happens when the light goes into a telescope? What's the guts of this telescope look like?
So the guts of the telescope, down at the bottom of this tube, there's the 10-inch mirror that collects the light. And that's actually a piece of glass about 1.5 inches thick, 10 inches in diameter, that was ground against another piece of glass to put the curve into it, and then polished. And you can actually control that surface to make it optically perfect. So,
how do you control your grinding? What do you use as a template? You can't just eyeball it.
No, there's actually a test where you bounce light off of the mirror and you look at how it comes to a focus. And it was actually developed by Leon Foucault back in the middle of the 19th century. Same guy who invented the pendulum, came up with a way that you can actually see the defects on the surface, even though those defects are less than a millionth of an inch. You can see them and then apply more pressure where you're polishing to remove the higher areas.
So you're kind of doing it by hand.
You're doing it all by hand. It's all done by hand. And you can actually make better optics by hand than by machine, because you can control exactly where things go. It's really, really pretty fantastic. So we have that mirror. The light comes down this tube, hits that mirror. It's coming to a focus, so it comes up and it bounces off a little mirror in the middle here, and then goes out the side of the tube where you can look and have the eyepiece. So all of these, I made all these pieces as well. These little struts that hold this in place are only 5/1000th of an inch thick, but that's just shim stock you can buy from any machine place. That came from just a machine supply place. And you put these pieces together, and up here your eyepiece goes in and you can focus it. So one of the other things that I've done with this focuser is build gears, and these are just scrap gears pulled out of some toys. Basically, these are the toy parts, and it means that you can have very precise focusing on the telescope. And you'll see similar ones on some of the other telescopes that I've made. So you have very precise focusing. We have a little telescope on the side that looks at a lot of sky. When you look through a big telescope, you can only see a little bit of sky at a time. With this, you can find things that you can therefore be able to see in this telescope. This is made out of PVC plumbing parts and some lenses. And lo and behold, you have your finders. And you'll see similar ones on each of the telescopes there.
So Doug, can you give us an idea of the intensity of what you can see through a massive telescope like this? It's really big. You look at the moon through binoculars, and even that's impressive. What can you see through this thing?
Well, the beauty of a big telescope is you can see a lot of detail in things, and it collects so much light. All that light, it's a big funnel. All that light that hits this goes into your eye, and so you can see things that are very distant. So when you look at a galaxy, you can actually see the arms in the galaxy. You look at gas clouds, you can see all the swirls in the gas clouds. This spring I went out and looked in the constellation Virgo. It's only a little pinpoint, but it's a quasar that's 3 billion light years away. It just looks like a little dot, but you realize what you're seeing. In fact, what I've always said about astronomy is what's great about it is not what you see, but what you're seeing. A lot of what you see is a little fuzz or a little spot. But when you realize that that light has been traveling for 3 billion years in your direction, that's what makes it so super cool. Super, super cool to see things.
When you look at planets, what kind of detail do you see? Can you...
All sorts of detail. I mean, Saturn, the rings, the gaps in the rings, the moons, the bands on the planet. Mars is particularly close this year, so I got to look at it the other night, but you see all the features on it. The polar cap, all the different land features. It's really very amazing. Jupiter, the swirls and the gas clouds, the moons. You see lots and lots of detail on planets through any of these scopes.
Can you see our lunar lander up on the moon?
No. No ground-based telescope can do that. It wasn't until a few years ago, about 7 or 8 years ago, there's a spacecraft in orbit around the moon called Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. It's a very sharp camera. It was the first time that anybody had seen the landing sites, and you could actually see the the base of the lander, the top part, of course, but you could also see the footsteps. You could see the tracks through it, which is just mind-blowing. I mean, going to the moon is one of the greatest things that's ever happened. Really very cool.
Doug Arion, you're the man. Let's close this roof so folks can see it close again.
Okay, let's go close the roof.
It's a pretty small motor for a big roof. Of course, it's on wheels. Doug is a member of a group called the Springfield Telescope Makers. They've been active since 1923, and they have a convention each summer, except for this year because of COVID, and it's in Springfield, Vermont. They have guest speakers, stargazing, cool telescopes. Sounds like a great time. After our show and tell, Doug and I went for a hike up the Sugarloaf Trail near his home in the White Mountains. The hike was easy for him, tough for me, because he hikes a lot. And as you can see, the payoff at the top is really worth the fairly short climb. So thanks, Doug Arion, for sharing your super cool observatory and the scopes within. And hopefully you'll be able to do a session with me soon where we virtually look through one of those telescopes and see what there is to see.